All this wreckage scattered throughout the room. Why haven't you guys cleaned it up?
Khan Stanild ordered us not to.
And that's because he wants to keep it messy?
Correct. Speaking frankly, my impression is that he wanted any visitors to feel as if we were still in a major state of crisis. Though visitors are few and far between. Upper government officials only, all of whom are working from offices with roofs. We are the lucky few over here, it seems. What a privilege it is to work in a building that is open to the weather. I understand the motivation of wanting to wait until we'd found everyone a place to live. But we achieved that 20 years ago. Thousands of survivors rehomed. And yet, I still have to step over puddles to get to my desk.
Before Asylum, all the loom gates were reset so that the Surgeborn couldn't use them to continue spreading. How did you reconnect to the city?
We tracked down a key swatch to Denevron. Found it in the mayor's home in Poldervale.
Your band is quite resourceful.
Dom loves discussing magical theory. He would be thrilled to speak with the Enclave's leading enchantress.
That is tempting. But the Eye wouldn't be pleased if he caught me speaking to your band any more than I have to. No offense, but I should really get back to work.
So, you.
Me?
The one causing trouble. The one poking into corners. The one who hasn't the good sense to leave well enough alone.
Had you allowed Arakim to reach out to us sooner, this could have been avoided.
Arakim has a proven record of poor judgment on matters of protocol. I will not be lectured by the person who put us all at risk on how best to handle our security. But I'm being impolite. Let us start afresh, shall we? Please, share what you hope to accomplish by loitering around the hold.
Before we met, it was clear from my exploration of Denevron that you have sourcing issues. Your lack of production capacity was obvious. We can help with your shortages.
A caravan of 7 is going to supply a fortress of thousands. What's next? You'll turn water into Sansa mead? Though you are correct, sourcing has been a consistent problem since even before we abandoned the capital. We have hundreds of trained scouts, but wooden swords and paper shields are hardly going to mount an offensive. So despite certain assertions that we must do something, we lack the tools with which to make any great strides.
Like it or not, I'm here to help.
The Enclave stands on a blade's edge. Stretch our resources too thin on risky ventures and we face collapse. Certain elements of our population call for action, for bold purpose. And I ask you, what purpose is bolder than survival?
Well,
Purely rhetorical. We must survive, and we must make considered, careful moves if we are to do so. There is no sacrifice too great towards that goal. You, at least, understand the precarity of our situation. Now understand the necessity of our caution.
I do, but...
Thank you for your time. You may go.
but...
You may go. Need I remind you that your access to Cassidon's hold is restricted?
Oh. I didn't mean to intrude.
You would do well to mind yourself, newcomer, or risk losing the privilege of coming to Cassidon's hold entirely.
Brynn, I'm glad you're here. I need to talk to you.
What's going on? You look pretty tired.
Yeah, I'm fine. It's just about those 90 Drake scales. I know Arya said we don't need them, but she just doesn't understand. It's dangerous out here, you know? Especially now that these Surgeborn are loose. We need to be prepared for anything. It's just gnawing in the back of my head. Do you think you could do it?
You haven't told me why we need them, or better yet, why we need 90.
We want the best gear and weapons, don't we?
So Solar asked for these?
Not exactly. But they have other uses too.
Seriously, when's the last time you slept?
Kashar don't need as much sleep as Ashar or Casil.
But you need some sleep.
It's been a while, maybe 10 days, or a week. I'm fine.
I'm guessing Aurea doesn't know you want me to go Drake hunting. Do you really think it's a good idea for us to go behind her back?
It looks bad, but she just doesn't see what I'm seeing.
To be honest, I'm not sure I see it either.
Please, just trust me.
Kaz, you need to tell me what's really going on here. I want to help, but the Drake scales? The Weaver Band is okay. More than okay. We're in the best shape we've been in since we entered the Enclave, now that we've made contact with the Heartsiders. Besides, the caravan is looking pretty full. It's not making sense.
You think I'm insane?
No, of course not.
Era's breath. I shouldn't have brought this up. Ugh. But you just don't understand. Everyone could die if I don't... It would be my fault.
Whatever this is, please just tell me what's going on.
No. I shouldn't have burdened you. Sorry, just go.
But Kaz...
I can't talk about this anymore.
Casmin is not okay. And I don't think bringing her more stuff is the answer. I'd better talk to Aurea. Hey, Aurea. About Casmin.
I know. I'm worried too. So is the rest of the band. Let's talk at the archive, privately. I'll join you and Lane in a moment.
All right.
It's safe to say Casmin hasn't been acting like herself. She's always been tightly wound, but this is something else.
Brynn, she seems more open with you than most. Can you describe in detail what's abnormal about her behavior?
She's begging me for more supplies, even though the caravan is chock full.
Not that we could tell, because she's covered it up.
More than that, she just seems distressed. She's always talking about worst-case scenarios, and lately it's like she's convinced we're all going to die.
I have heard rumors of abnormal behavior developing in Kashar that could be linked to this.
What kind of rumors?
In polytheistic beliefs that are pervasive in the southern part of the Maida, there is an affliction known as Ira's Plague. The sufferer is haunted by twisted visions of death and pain. The goddess of justice, Ira, won't allow the sufferer inner peace until they repent through scrupulosity.
Scrupulosity? What is that exactly?
Oh, my apologies. I forget most people don't follow UD in eschatological study. Scrupulosity can be best described as a series of repetitive acts that one is compelled to do. For example, if Casmin is plagued by relentless images of our band dying from exposure,
She might send our point out over and over again to retrieve supplies.
yes, in order to dispel the horrific visions.
Are you seriously suggesting Casmin is... what? Possessed?
Of course not. I'm confident that this is merely a stigmatized phenomenon that could not be explained through facts or science. So the populace explained it through religious folly instead.
Any ideas what facts could explain it?
Not yet.
I didn't realize Casmin was spiritual. Is she really trying to hide these visions from us?
Though not devout herself, Casmin grew up with a strict Ashar mother.
You're right, she did.
It's possible Casmin's affliction was a point of shame or contention between them. Perhaps she fears rejection if she shares her experience with us.
Kashar. What does Era's plague have to do with them?
While most see Kashar as a celebrated merging of the two cultures, some fringe sects disagree. They believe the wider lineage simply leads to more ancestral sin that must be atoned, and thus only Kashar can be afflicted.
Really? Where do you land?
The concept of impure lineage is clearly hogwash, but I suspect the affliction could somehow correlate to the Kashar's unique physiology.
All right. Casmin is suffering. We need to do something about it.
And preemptively? No exorcisms?
As I said, this is likely nothing more than a condition that has been stigmatized by religion. A scientific explanation must exist, and thankfully, we are in the heart of progressive thinking.
You think the Enclave could have done research on this?
Makes sense. Where should I start looking?
The steps in the upper city is where I'd start. Between the main building of the spire and the atrium used to stand a school for alchemists. From your explorations, the surge hit that area pretty hard, but some of the building may still be standing.
Great. What am I looking for?
Maybe the name of someone who suffered like Casmin, or a healer who treated the condition. If you find someone like that, you'll want to search the areas of the city where they spent time. Era's plague is wildly misunderstood across the Maida. If we could find a treatment, it could help more than Casmin.
You're right. I'll start with the steps, then expand my search.
I don't want to talk about the scales anymore, but the Hearthsiders look more traumatized than a beast of burden after a hurricane.
What? Why would you say that?
I would think someone who grew up in the wake of war would recognize the signs. Disorganized and unable to triage their own problems. They're overwhelmed. Suspicious of us despite our clear good intentions, suggesting paranoia. And while their leader is in deep denial of the very real crisis the Enclave is in, the others accept it. They've been stewing in turmoil for so long, it's become their new normal. And it's probably more comfortable for them than the prospect of change.
You're right. They do remind me of some veterans back in Carnhaven.
Saw it 1,000 times over while working in Udea. Aurea may not want to hear it, but these people are completely lost in their crisis.
What makes you say that?
Aurea has a case of hero worship when it comes to the Enclave. She can be blinded by it sometimes.
Huh.
It's not to say great things didn't happen here. But at the end of the day, the Hearthsiders aren't gods. They're fallible. Just like us.
Kaz, you know you can talk to us about what's going on, right?
Nothing's going on. I'm fine, I promise.
You don't seem fine, though.
It's just, no one seems to understand how important the Ashpeak Drake skills are, and bad things are going to happen if we don't... You know what? I just can't talk about this right now. I'm sorry.
Kaz, what's going on with the caravan?
What is...
You've got the shutters closed, even though it's practically bursting with...
Not much of this building left, but looks like it's my lucky day. This tome's titled Disordered Thinking and Mental Anguish. Looks thick. An insert says, a herbalist in the market found success treating a variety of patients suffering from these types of afflictions. Better search the market next. A ledger belonging to the herbalist that owned this stand. There are notes on all kinds of afflictions, both physical and mental, unfortunately. Looks like they asked one patient with symptoms similar to Casper to keep a diary during treatment. I wonder if I could track it down. He lived in the lower city. A diary. The man it belonged to details all his anxieties and intrusive visions. I wonder if Kasmin could relate to him. It's hard to think about her experiencing all this alone. He mentions that he also sought help at the Hallowed Higher Rise. I should check the temple for more information. Afflictions. I wonder if it might document something similar to Era's plague. If Casmin really believes she's been cursed or afflicted, no wonder she's trying to keep it to herself.
Exactly as I theorized. Era's plague is little more than a stigmatized condition with a perfectly rational explanation.
Which is?
A perfect storm of family traits and lifestyle choices, exaggerated by circumstance. Diet, athletics, and sleep all factor in.
Casmin hasn't been sleeping much.
Might be worth presenting this research to her to see if the rest resonates.
Good idea.
Oria and I will join you when you're ready.
Casmin, we need to talk.
Could it wait? I'm in the middle of touch counting the armory.
No, it can't.
We've been worried about you.
I'm fine. Seriously, don't worry about me.
No one has seen you sleep in days. You're clearly hiding 2 bands' worth of supplies behind the caravan shutters. And half the time you're talking a league a minute about catastrophes that are never going to happen. We can't let you keep going like this.
No. Maybe I've been a little off lately, but I'm fine, seriously. I'm just trying to keep our Weaver band prepared in case... I just want us all to be safe.
We are safe.
Kaz, I've been doing research on a condition you might know as Ira's Plague.
I'm not possessed.
We know.
The Enclave studies on Ira's Plague concluded that it's not a religious affliction, but a disorder of the mind. The sufferer experiences a cycle of relentless, disturbing thoughts and all manner of compulsions to fix them, including hoarding. Though it may be passed on through families, this condition is often exacerbated by a lack of sleep.
Brynn found a diary belonging to a Cassil man in Denevron who suffered from this. I think you should read it. He describes the intrusive visions that began after the birth of his son. Horrible fears he would drop his baby that he was so ashamed of, he couldn't share them with anyone.
That's awful.
It reached a point where he couldn't hold his own child, until he sought help.
So you're saying, if I have Ira's Plague, there's a cure?
We found evidence of a treatment, yes. We'd need to talk to someone at Cassidin's Hold to know more.
But we didn't want to speak to someone outside the Weaver Band on your behalf without talking to you first.
I don't know.
None of this is your fault. It's okay to get help. We all need it from time to time.
But no one else seems to need help. Everyone else is handling being here just fine, and I'm the only one having a breakdown.
Hey, it could be any one of us tomorrow. And I know for a fact that if this were happening to anyone else, you'd cut them some slack.
She's right. It's hard for all of us to see you suffering like this. We care about you, and we just want you to be okay.
Fine. You can talk to the Weavers in Cassidin's Hold. I can't promise. I'm still not sure about all of this.
We'll go one step at a time.
You sure you don't want to run away, screaming?
What? Why?
Nothing. Never mind.
Come on. Seriously, what are you talking about?
It's just... That's generally the reaction that sufferers of Ira's Plague get across the Maida Basin. After all, Ira only stalks the wicked for penance.
Are you religious yourself?
I don't really know anymore. My mother was deeply religious, so I was raised to believe in the Southern gods. I always accepted them as real, but lately, I've begun to question.
How so?
I mean, if what you've discovered is true, and the visions I have aren't penance from the goddess of justice, I've been hanging on to a lot of self-contempt for nothing.
That is a heavy burden to carry out of faith. Kaz, you do so much for other people. What could you possibly have to repent for?
I don't know. At all hours of the day, a voice is howling at me for never being good enough. Never hitting the mark. It's all I can hear. How am I supposed to ignore it?
Lane's research indicates that with treatment, you can though.
I think if you knew how awful I really am, and how much I deserve to be reminded of it, you wouldn't say that.
Kasmin, we know you, and we accept you as you are.
We'll see.
Have you ever told anyone else about these visions you're having?
Only one person. My mother.
I take it she wasn't very supportive?
I'll never forget how she looked at me. Like she was terrified. She told me to keep my impure visions to myself, and that if I behaved, eventually Ira would leave me alone.
How old were you?
5. I had just started school, and I was struggling with being away from my parents to attend classes. Images of them murdered by bandits while I was away hounded me during the 6 hours I spent outside the home. I swallowed my fears, though, hoping, as my mother told me, that if I was good and went to school, the visions would stop.
Even if Ira actually was out for you, I still wouldn't run. Anyone who cares about you knows you're not a threat.
I wish I felt as sure of that as you do.
In time, I'll be able to say, I told you so.
Maybe.
So, Aurea, what do you make of the Enclave Council?
Their living history. What they've seen, what knowledge they must have preserved. All this time, they've been here, holding down the fort. It's great you've offered to help the Axle and the Spindle. Just be careful you're not going over the eye's head.
Honestly, I've seen his type before, and I don't trust him. He's slippery. We need to
respect the leader of the territory we're in, Brynn. He's led the Enclave during a crisis. The rules change. He knows more about the Surge, the Enclave, and arguably even magic. Because while we've been outcasts, he's been here, at the heart of our culture. It's something we need to respect.
I'll try.
Good.
Hey, you all right?
Yes. There's something I should have told you, so I'll just come out and say it. I was born in the Enclave.
How is that possible?
Oh, luck or tragedy, depending on your perspective. Before I was born, my mother and father lived here happily for several years. But they decided it would be better if my mother raised me with my grandmother and great aunts for the first few months of my life. So she left with me when I was just a hatchling, with every intention to return.
But the surge happened.
The life I should have had was lost for good. Because of all this, I never knew my father. I don't even know his name.
Is it common for Oberon hatchlings to be raised apart from their fathers?
No, but it is common for extended family to be involved in the raising of children. As you know, I come from a long line of weavers, many of whom traveled in caravans their entire lives. It was apparently quite a shock when my mother fell for a Hearthsider.
So your parents were looking for a compromise when it came to raising you?
Exactly. And I wouldn't trade my childhood on the road. My great-aunts and my grandmother made me who I am, after all.
Still, you missed out on your father. It's natural to wonder about him.
I suppose.
Isn't it a little strange your mother never told you his name?
She was separated from him so suddenly. She had no chance to say goodbye. My mother's a strong woman, but whenever I asked about him as a child, she could only manage a few words before her face would crumble. She found it too painful to discuss, and I never wanted to pry.
But now?
I can't help but wish I knew who he was.
Does your family have something to do with your attachment to the Enclave?
Being here has meant a lot in some ways, and in others, it's very different from what I expected. Meeting the Hearthsiders was a lifelong dream. But the circumstances of our encounter? Not what I'd envisioned.
Knowing now that this is your birthplace, I can see why that would be disheartening.
This was meant to be my home, after all.
This is definitely a twist. I feel like you could have told me sooner.
I am sorry for that. You need to be able to trust me.
So why hide it?
Talking about difficult and private matters is not my strong suit. And frankly, I rarely see the point in dwelling on the past.
I guess you and your mother have that in common.
You might be right.
So, we're going to find out who your father was.
You would help me?
Of course. Maybe Lane would have some ideas on where to start.
Actually, I had an idea myself. The spindle mentioned a statue of my mother. It's clear the Enclave commemorated their champions. I can't shake this feeling my father is among them.
You think there's a statue of your father?
I know it sounds strange, but the handful of times that my mother spoke of him, she described him as this great hero. Since she was one herself, is it so crazy to think she might have meant that literally?
Maybe not. I can scope out the statues in Upper Denevron for a resemblance, if that's what you want.
Good. And thank you.